Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Saka here with another episode of Kerbal Space Program 1.2 for beginners. When we last left off, our intrepid crew reached Minmus and landed successfully. So we are here at the Space Center. As every loaded game, we want to click on the tracking station and we see our flights in progress. We have one debris that's floating out here around Kerbin, and we can see what it is going to do. Now we could click on this and terminate it, or if you want some Kessler syndrome, you can keep all of your stages orbiting the planet, which may prove challenging. We also have one ship, and that is on Minmus. Well, these are toggling off, so toggle off the debris. We have one ship landed on Minmus and it zooms in. We also have a Kerbal on EVA, Valentina. So let's click on Valentina. She's been on Minmus for 3 minutes. Let's fly Valentina, which doesn't make any sense in the grand scheme of things, but it basically just means take control. And now we are here in our salt flat bed. There's only a few mountains in the distance. We picked a very nice landing place for us, but it is time to go home. So once you are satisfied with your spacewalk or your moonwalk, you can head over to the ladder, and once you get close, there will be a prompt to grab the ladder, which we will need to do. F to grab, and then we use the W key to climb all the way back up. Luckily, Minmus has low enough gravity that you can use your RCS thrusters to get up to the capsule. You don't really need a ladder for Minmus, but for a higher gravitational body, you definitely will. We'll click B to board. We are going to close our ladder by left-clicking on the ladder, and right-clicking the ladder and left-clicking on retract. That will pull up the ladder. And now we need to plan our escape. So just like Kerbin, this thing rotates from west to east. We are actually moving in this direction. So if we were to left-click on the orbit, granted, it's only 9.2 meters a second, but that's 9.2 meters a second that we don't have to worry about if we shoot to the 90, which, unlike the KSC, the Kerbal Space Center, 90 is not to our right. So actually, when we take off, we are going to pull slightly up and to the left. We want to point about right here. Now, because there is no gravity, no atmosphere that we are pushing through, we can initiate our gravity turn fairly quickly. We can pitch over very quickly and not have to worry about really hitting anything because we are out here in the middle of nowhere. So as long as we gain a little bit of altitude, we will be fine, and we don't need a whole lot of altitude to do it. So let's SAS on for stability control. We'll bring up our panel. Our batteries are charged. They were sitting here in the sun, giving us precious energy. And let's take off very slowly, only maybe 25% throttle. We'll pitch over to the 90 and hold that there. And now we can go over to the horizon and start building up that speed. And actually, let's cut the throttle and see how we are doing. Landing gear up. We look at our map. We're at 904 meters, so we want to increase our altitude just a bit. So let's get our prograde marker facing 45 degrees. We're picking up a little bit of speed, and Minmus is one of those that if you're not paying attention, you'll shoot right off of it. See, we're right there, 18,000 meters. So let's plot a maneuver to circularize our orbit. This isn't entirely necessary, but if you want to time everything just right, a maneuver node will help. So it's only a 2-second burn, 50 meters a second. Let's point Valentina at the maneuver and just use our caret key to speed up. When we're close to the surface, we're sort of limited on our time acceleration, but that's okay. We don't want to go too fast anyway. 10 times below 6,000 meters, so we can go up another step. And as before, once our maneuver node nears this prograde marker, we will be essentially ready to burn right at our apoapsis. Let's just speed up a little bit here and get within the 10-second range. And then we're just going for 2 seconds, so we want to burn at 1. 3, 2, 1. Cut. All right, SAS off. Undo our maneuver node, and we should be, yes, in a 19 by 18 orbit. Now, how do we get back to Kerbin from here? One would think, well, I just point at it and fire. That's going to be good, right? Well, if you remember our velocity, we are surrounding Minmus. Even though we're orbiting here, we are also traveling along with Minmus. We are moving essentially in this direction. We're doing a lot of rotations doing it, but we are still moving in this direction. In the grand scheme of things, we want to slow down. We want to fall back down into Kerbin. So, how do we do that? Well, we essentially counteract the orbit of Minmus, which means instead of burning directly toward the planet, we actually want to burn retrograde to the planet's movement. We want to burn right along this line here. Essentially what that will do is that will allow us to leave Minmus orbit at the same time slowing our orbit relative to our parent body, in this case Kerbin, which is what we would like to do. In order to see this happen, we want to plot a maneuver right there on the back side of the planet. We want to add the maneuver, and we want our orbit to shoot forward. You see our apoapsis climbing along this orbit path. So if you want to be nice and fine-tuned, keep the apoapse on the orbit line. So we'll speed up a little bit more, and once we get fast enough, we will leave. Right there, we will leave Minmus's sphere of influence in 2 hours with that burn, and we will fall to 27 million meters. Now, look at the overall orbit. Because we've burned against the planet at the point of Minmus, we will essentially return back to Minmus without any help. What we want to do is continue burning, and our periaps will drop and continue to drop. And it gets a little wonky, so this is where we see our thrust vector here, our exit vector, is no longer in line with the planet's orbit. So we will adjust the timing, adjust the timing of our burn to more coincide with Minmus's orbit. And just by doing that, we lowered our periaps once more. Remember, we were over here. We had a much bigger periaps, but by changing our timing and getting that escape vector right along the orbit, we shaved off a lot of speed. Let us continue to burn prograde. Let's continue to speed up along that axis. And you actually see we had a brief encounter with the moon over there, but we are shooting past. That's fine. A little more fine-tuning here. Whoops. What I did there was the mouse wheel also works on this, and I was trying to zoom the camera and I hit one of these nodes. So if you're fixing a maneuver node and all of a sudden it all goes awry, that's what happened. Let me cancel that. Start a fresh maneuver node because I'm not entirely sure what I did, but we will pull our speed out, then adjust our escape vector to match Minmus's orbit. See where we're at. Okay, we're at 13 million. Let's continue to speed up. It drops. Let's adjust our escape vector once more. So essentially at this point in the orbit once more. And we're down to 3 million, which is fine. Let's speed up some more. Another encounter with the moon, and let's just keep on going until we see a periaps under 70,000. Whoops, I did it again. 170. Let's speed up just a little touch more. 13, so that's too much. We want to slow down just a little bit more. 359. So you can see not a whole lot needs to happen to really change this. 154. I think that'll be good for now, and then we will do a course correction over here whenever we are out of Minmus's sphere of influence. So that is 53 seconds away. We'll go ahead and click after the node and warp to the next maneuver. We are going to go around the moon here, around Minmus, just floating fancy free until T-1 minute. We only need 3 seconds on both sides of the node to make this happen, which is more than enough fuel, I must say. Coming back to the light side of the planet now. We can see our flag down here. Congrats on your first moon landing. We're essentially back over where we took off. So if you wanted to be nice and efficient, you could have burned straight from our launch site, straight out of orbit. But we played it safe, which is fine. Let's turn on SAS and get back to the maneuver node. And then for ease of use, I will rotate the spacecraft until this solar panel is here facing the sunlight directly. And we're essentially waiting for 3 seconds here. Here we go. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, burn. Using up the fuel. That camera rotation means we are leaving Minmus's sphere of influence, and that little burn there should be enough to get us close enough to Kerbin. Looking at the map, we are indeed leaving Minmus's sphere of influence, kind of a little off. This wasn't the most efficient, but we are going retrograde to Minmus. Minmus is going to continue going this way, and we are now going this way. Ultimately, that will put us at 160,000 meters, which is good enough for us. Let's go ahead and warp to the Minmus escape and get back home. The time warp is smart enough to keep us at a level where we are not going too fast, but good enough that we aren't just sitting here spinning our tires. We'll warp further down the line. And now the node is 40 seconds away, so we will wait for that transition. Here we go. 4, 3, 2, 1. We will see the nav ball change. And now we are only at 85 meters a second orbiting Kerbin. That is why we are falling back toward Kerbin. Now we could slow down, or we could actually point closer to the planet to shallow up our approach. So if we add a maneuver and we burn, say, this way, we shorten up our orbit a bit. So now our new periapsis is 66,000. And what I would like to do, 66,000, and we're going to crash at that rate. You can see how fine-tuned this is. 32. I think that'll be good enough for us to sort of skim the atmosphere and come back out, because what I would like to do is get on plane with the Kerbal Space Center. That's what I would like to do. Because we're doing sort of a mid-course correction, it really doesn't matter where we do the burn. It's very small. So we'll just sort of see how we do, and we'll eyeball it from here. There. Right on the dot. Turn off SAS. That will put us at 32, which I think should be good for us. Essentially, we are going to try a maneuver called Aerobraking. What that means is our capsule will fall into the atmosphere of Kerbin and start slowing down. It'll start impacting the air at 70,000 meters and below. But we're not going so far enough down that we hit the thick stuff and we really start slowing down and we fall. What I would like to do is come out on the moon's plane. Now, when we get a nice circular orbit around Kerbin once more, we will adjust our inclination relative to the moon, because the moon is directly at 90 degrees east, which is the exact same point as the Kerbal Space Center. So essentially, by lining up with the moon, we will also line up with the Space Center, and we can see if we can touch down relatively close. So what I'm going to do is F5 for safety. That is a quick save. And then you hold F9 to load. So we can move forward here. and see what happens. We are going to warp closer to Kerbin. We're 4 days out, 3 days out. We're going to fall under the moon's orbit, 1 day out. And now we're really going to start getting close. What we want to do is point retrograde as much as we can once we hit about 100,000 meters. So here we go. Time warp is turning down. We are going to turn on SAS and go retrograde. We want our rocket engine to hit the atmosphere first. So this is going to use up some battery, with Valentina trying to hold right on this marker as we dip into the atmosphere here. Once we cross 70, it's going to automatically go to physical time acceleration, so we won't have the full time acceleration at our disposal, but that's fine. We're not a big spacecraft, so I don't think we'll have to worry about it too much. Now this may be a little aggressive, and if our engine burns up, that's kind of fine, because that means we're coming back down to Earth. We can't do the minor adjustments that we would like to do, which, yeah, I think this engine is toast. The overheating sort of balancing. I think we might have went a little too far in, so that is where the quick load will come into play. If this thing explodes, we should be fine. It's right on that ragged edge. Maybe 40 would do? Yeah, 40 would do. So if things go a bit pear-shaped, you can always hold F9 to load the last quick save, and here we are. We can readjust and say, nope, 35 was way too, 32 was too much for what we wanted to do. So we will actually go, let's see, radial out, meaning we're going to push our atmosphere out, or our orbit out just a little bit. 42, let's give that a try. And it's a game of inches, really. Warp here. Once again, we're going to come back down to the planet. Remember your quick save and your quick load. And like I said, that wasn't catastrophic. Our capsule survived and we were already retrograde, so we were able to withstand the heat and the temperatures because we have that heat shield right below it. But it's nice to sort of aerobrake and practice doing that. Certainly before any big aerobraking maneuver, quick save please. Your life could depend on it. All right, 200,000, 100,000. Let's slow it down and get Valentina to point retro once more. We'll speed up until we hit 70 and then see how this does. Now, while you're burning up, while you're in the atmosphere, you really don't want to be under time acceleration because it's calculating all of this stuff at 4 times normal speed, and there could be calculation errors. So while you are re-entering, it is good practice to just sort of let it go at 1 times normal speed. As we are doing this, if I go to the map view, you can see our apoapsis dropping incredibly, and I am not thrusting at all. This is the atmosphere doing the work for us. So if we go too far, this apoapsis will drop below 70, and we will be essentially pulled in and captured this time around, which is not what we want. We kind of want it to stop about right in here. We don't want a big orbit, but we want one small enough that we're not trying to come in from a very high altitude. How are things here? We should be going back up shortly. Looking at this vertical speed gauge, I want this to start going back up. And it is a little bit. It's definitely coming back up. And then once we get back out into the vacuum, this heating should go away because we're no longer in the atmosphere. So we're going up. We are climbing. The heating should be going down, and it is. Let's take a look at our map. And indeed, we are aerobraking. We're down to almost 7 million meters. So this is a pretty good capture. As long as our spaceship can survive this point in the flight, which it looks like it will. We're leaving even this little bit of the atmosphere is causing this much havoc, so you can see how dangerous re-entry is if you underestimate it. But it looks like we're good, so I'm going to go 2 times normal speed. The overheating is going away. We're getting back up into space, and things are cooling off nicely. And then we will get back up. The part will stop glowing like a madman. And there we are, back 70,000. So now what I would like to do is raise up my periapsis just a bit so that we don't fall back into the atmosphere here. So we want to add a maneuver and just kick it up a touch. That's more than a touch. Ideally, yeah, this will work out kind of good. Where our periaps is sort of along the terminator, which is where the light side and the dark side of the planet sits. Ideally, we would want our periaps over here so that we have plenty of room to see the Kerbal Space Center, but this is okay. We'll be coming down, and as long as we can catch the Kerbal Space Center there, we'll be fine. So this will be good. Let's go down just a smidge using that mouse wheel. 244, 227, mouse wheeling down, 181, mouse wheel down again, 160, mouse wheel down again, 143, 118, that'll be good. And that is only a 17 meter a second burn, so we will turn to our maneuver, and we will accelerate time to the next maneuver. Kerbin will fly by, but we are low enough, we are under the moon's orbit, so we should be good. All right, we're gonna wait until about 3 seconds to go, and then we will accelerate up just a touch. Oh, that was quick. 3, 2, 1, cut. All right, so we have essentially raised our periapsis up out of the atmosphere, so we are not going to burn up this time. And now we want to left click on the moon and set as target, and we see we are 3.9 degrees off, and we just missed our ascending node. So there's no worries here. Let's go to our descending node, add a maneuver, and increase our inclination here. We start to see the descending and ascending nodes flip. And if we execute this maneuver right here, we will be at 0, which is exactly what we want. That is a 15-second burn, though, and hopefully we have enough time to do that. All right, let's go. Warp to the next maneuver. We're going to fling around the planet. We will get Valentina to point the correct way. Here we go, and then SAS on. Turn to the maneuver. We are going to point straight up because we are coming to our descending node, and we are going to burn at 7 seconds or thereabouts. Here we go. 7 seconds. Yeah, we've got plenty of fuel. And cut. 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 That should be close enough, if I do have to say so myself. Yes, we are at 0. So now is the tricky part. When we come around, we want the Kerbal Space Center to be somewhere along here. And what we're looking for is that Africa continent right here. So it may take a few orbits. We'll go ahead and warp to here. And we will watch the planet rotate and see if this is good for us. If it is, we will start initiating our landing, and if not, we'll wait for another pass. There goes the Kerbal Space Center right there. We're not going to catch it this time around. But maybe it'll rotate back for us. We will see. Let's warp around the planet once more. It slows down right here because we are lower, but it'll pick back up once we are further out from the planet. coming around again for another pass. There goes the Kerbal Space Center right there. At our apoapse, it's at our periapse. So we'll give it one more orbit, but what I think I've done is I have inadvertently made it to where our orbit is sort of perfectly aligned to where the Kerbal Space Center will always be at our periapse when we're on our apoapse, which is not intended whatsoever. But the rotation of Kerbin is a 6-hour orbit. So if we are in like a 6-hour orbit, which we may be, yeah, we're pretty close. But it is sort of catching up just a little bit. We could raise or lower our orbit to help that out. As a matter of fact, it might not be a bad idea here. Let's raise our periapsis just a little bit to where we're still not in the moon, but we're not at a 6-hour orbit. And this is just extra fluff. I'm just showing you how you would do something like this. You could have easily already landed, been down in the ocean, and collected your science by now, but I'm just showing you how to line up a specific target in orbit to get the job done that you would like to do, is all. All right, turn on our maneuver node. We're gonna turn that way. Speed up here. 4, 3, 2, 1, cut. All right, so we've raised our orbit up just a touch. We should no longer be in sort of a synchronous orbit where the planet is rotating twice for every time we go around. Where is the Kerbal Space Center? Oh, it's close. It was so close. We could get aggressive here and burn for it, but I don't think that is actually in our best interest. We don't want to come straight down because then there wouldn't be a whole lot of atmosphere to slow us down and our parachutes wouldn't open. And if you remember episode 1, that doesn't turn out too well whenever you have something like that. Now this should be fine. So what we're doing is we're lining up here. We can F5 for safety, in the words of Das Valdez, and we are going to plot our maneuver node. We are going to start to slow down here, and in fact, we could probably turn more towards the planet and essentially aim past the Kerbal Space Center. Now, what this is going to do is this is going to factor in slowing down in the atmosphere and the planet rotating. So it's a guessing game. If you are shooting completely stock Kerbal Space Program, you may miss this, but at least we are lined up. As you can see, if we drag this all the way over, our line is pointed right at the Kerbal Space Center. Of course, we have to factor in the planet rotation and our slowing down. So let's shoot for, say, right there. Right there. It's a tough call. If you can nail it, awesome for you. If not, practice makes perfect. So we can see the Kerbal Space Center over there coming into view. It's a 15-second burn, which should be the majority of our fuel. Let's go ahead and warp to it. We will burn 7 seconds, and then we will detach and come in with our, with just our capsule. Oh, hello, asteroid, or something. Looks kind of fishy out there. All right, here we go. 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. Full burn. Let's get everything we got. It'll use up most of our fuel, so even if this was not something that we would like to do, we're stuck with it. We're good. All right, cut. SAS off. And now it is time to bid this boy adieu. So we have full electric charge, which is what we need. We could go retrograde for the time being, and then right before the atmosphere, we ditch it so we have maximum charging here. We could do that. So let's go down to 100,000 meters and then ditch it. We'll pop it and we will be essentially on our own. We're coming down and we are going to fly over it, it seems. But there's the Kerbal Space Center. We are online, but it looks like we undershot. Let's just separate. Let's face retrograde. And then let's plunge into the atmosphere and see what happens. Since we're coming in at more of an aggressive angle, we might actually come down not too far from it. If you had a space plane, then certainly you could dip into the atmosphere and come back. But let's see what happens. We're going to start hitting that atmosphere hard. There's the Kerbal Space Center there, so we're not going to land on it. That ablator is taking a beating, but it is a massive heat shield. Bye, Kerbal Space Center. Our other stage is burning up ahead of us. We're packing in the Gs. We're almost to 15 Gs as we're slamming into the atmosphere here. The ablator is doing all of the work, taking all of this heat down. And not too bad. I mean, the Kerbal Space Center is right over there. The island is right over there with the other landing strip. So not too far off. If you did have a space plane, it wouldn't be anything for you to just turn around and spin that around. SAS off. We don't need it anymore. We are free falling. And what I like to do is wait until about 5,000 meters or so. Let the spacecraft really start to slow down on its own and get into this thick part of the atmosphere before we pop the chute. It is gray, which means we are free and clear to open the chute if we can, but we can see the VAB right over there. And in career mode, it pays literally to land close to the Space Center, so because the closer you are, the more return you get from the spacecraft that you bring back, which is very cool stuff. Parachute will open, we pull 15 Gs for all of a moment, and down we come. Let's speed up time. You can speed up time while under parachute until about the time you hit the ground, so at about 50 meters or so, start to slow it down and go to real time so the parachute does not break. And here we go at 10 meters a second. Splash down. The Kerbals have made a successful journey. It's just a matter of recovering the vessel. And we're back. We're back. I say again, there we go. So we are all set, and if we look at the tracking station, the only thing we have flying is a flag, which is right over here. Congrats on your first landing, and there are the coordinates and the debris. So if you ever wanted to come back to your flag, now you know how to get into an orbit and how to sort of change your orbit alignment to fly right over this thing. In Minmus, it's easy to land on a place you've already been. Someplace like Kerbin, you can see just a little minor tweaking. We flew over it, but, you know, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. But for the next episode, what I think I will talk about is landing on the moon. We might take that same rocket up to the moon and do it again, or we might try some docking, but that's going to do it for me in this episode, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you learned something. Like, share, and subscribe if you are so bold, and I will see you in the next Kerbal Space Program video. Take care.